Out of all these roles that you've had so far, today you're a gallerist, but you've been a writer, in a publication, running a residency. What is your favorite and the one that you enjoy the most?
So I like being a gallerist because it gives me a rounded
Okay.
perspective. The nicest part about that is that you do look at a lot of art, and you get in touch with younger people, different perspectives, selections of art. And that's an exciting process, because you're also bringing your own intuition, your awareness to the table to understand that, yes, this work of art or this idiom has the
Hmm.
potential to become an
Hmm.
important idiom. And then it's about shaping that.
Hmm.
So I enjoy that.
Can you share your experience of running the residency? How was that? And how was building partnerships then? I'm really interested in knowing because, in today's time, we have social media, I work with people all around the world. But thanks to internet that it makes a lot of those things possible and easy. But I'm sure at that point, while you were having these conversations and art was still not in the spotlight as much it is today. And looking back, I'm sure at India, it was a very different scene. What was it working back then in the arts? Did you not feel it was, did you had your own inhibitions of not being a sustainable career? Because people have that even today, like how it's going to pay off your bills, how will you make money, even though you're not being an artist.
I won't say it was easy, okay? I won't say it was easy, but I
Okay.
think that what kept us going was a sort of idealism and belief in wanting to make something that would be a sort of bridge to the rest of the world. And it was
Okay.
slow, even though email was still around, and you would meet people face to face, and they would come to Ahmedabad, and conversations were held slowly, languorously over trips to various homes, cups of tea, etc. I think now with social media and internet, we've lost that, connection.
Yeah, the slowness,
It's a very
the tactileness.
yeah, but it's a very, transactional thing. Like, let's get this over with. What am I getting out of this?
Yeah.
And I think that's a
Yeah.
little disappointing because if you speak to some of the older artists, they also have
Yeah.
this sense of loss that, people don't have time these days to have engaging conversations. Like, I remember it's
Right.
many hours with some of the older artists or with collectors in their homes looking at art, and before you knew it half a day had gone away. But today we're managing time in little bits and slices, so I think
Yeah.
art needs time. Art needs a space to really just kind of flow. Things can't be done in a rush. I really do believe that.
Living from Bombay, I'm sure that is, how do you manage that perspective on being in a place where you art is about, being so much into it versus in a city where everything is so fast and everybody has so little time and is always on to next. How is this experience also from moving from Ahmedabad to Bombay? I'm sure that must look very different.
Yeah, I mean, Ahmedabad and Bombay are very different, of course, although I started off in Bombay. I
Okay.
think the thing is that you decide what you want to do for yourself. Do you want to work in a
Right.
pace? But I agree with you about Bombay because even New York and London are not so chaotic as Bombay is. Bombay is really chaotic. But I suppose each city
That's
has
true,
its own
but it has a lot of creative energy. I think
does.
that we'll give Bombay. Okay, tell me something. You worked with both ends now over
Yeah.
the years, artists and art collectors. We've spoken a little bit about art collectors, and we'll get there. But first, let's speak about artists from over the years. If you've seen what has changed, what were I think, the inhibitions and bottlenecks for artists then and now? Your experience with working with artists over the years. What do you want to share about that?
So, I had the privilege to work with artists like Akbar Padamsi and Ravinder Reddy. And,
Yeah.
these are all old school folks who don't talk about contracts and don't talk about transactions. Things are about the work, the kind of preoccupations about the work, the concerns around the work. Finance is important, yes, but it's one aspect of it. So I think it was much
Right.
slower. It was old school. It was about the process. It was about art. I'm not saying it isn't today. It is, but it's very cut and dried. I mean, I'm sorry to say this, but I think a
Hmm.
lot of young artists don't think twice before just kind of being bulls in the china shop to say, okay, this is what I want, and this is what you deliver, and when are you going to do it? If you don't do it, I'm gone. And you can put in 3 years of
Yeah.
work into somebody's life to build them, and then they'll
Yeah.
hop on to the next thing, and it's okay.
Yeah.
But it's for somebody who's old school, it sometimes
Hmm.
makes me wonder, what are we doing? Why is everything so transactional? I mean, as I understood it, great artists and great art dealers have worked on trust, and they worked in
Yeah.
relationship, and
Right.
integrity is very important. But I understand that everybody's in a rush today to get to the top galleries, get to the top collectors, blah blah blah. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
I wish younger artists would have
Absolutely.
patience. I really wish
Yeah.
younger artists would have some more patience and be some, sort of be considerate.
How is the process with for working with artists? Let's say from a gallery's perspective, also. Um, how do you work with them? What is the way? Let's say what goes in your mind when you're looking at an artist's work and you feel like, okay, this is something that I'd like to represent, I'd like to curate a part of my process, or and then how is your dealing with an artist, that goes further into it?
So, when I mean, we have an open call process at the gallery. Once a year, we have an open call, although people do mail around the year. Um, and then once, if I select something from the open call, I spend some time looking at what they've done, what their trajectory has been, etc. Like, say, if I had an artist who's done 50 shows around the world, but yet is not been signed up by a gallery, then that would tell you something, about what is required to build this person up. And it's a slow process. So these are the kind of things, and of course, the work itself is, important. Is it unique? Is it a unique idiom? Does it have the ability to sustain itself? When you look at a work of art, you'll know whether the artist's work has the potential to be able to sustain itself over the years. Yeah. I mean, of course, everybody has creative blocks, but so I think that
Yeah.
that aspect is really important.
And what about how do you work with artists on day-to-day basis, artists you're representing, you're working with? What does an artist gallerist relationship look like for you? how
Well,
how involved are you in the process? How does that look like?
I think I'm too involved in the process and I need to distance a little bit, very honestly. But I work
Okay.
with a small
Yeah.
group of artists, and put
Okay.
in a lot of energy into each person's career. And we have like contracts which are renewable every 2 3 years. And I think that's the only way to go, because if you don't work with some sort of exclusivity and you want to play the field, then you shouldn't seek a gallery representation. Because I think a gallery representation provides certain things, but there's also a limitation to what gallery representation can do, in the sense that, well, one gallery can't sell to all the collectors in the world, right? It's not practically possible.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, but we work through partnerships, we work with collaborations. So it is always possible to have a gallery representation and yet work with other agencies. But I think it's also about personalities. It's about people getting on with each other. It's like a marriage, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. I think, and it does. I think you have a very good perspective on, that. I think we all have very different way of working. Some people are extremely involved. Some people like to give that distance, and all artists have very different ways of working with people. And
Yeah.
it's like a matchmaking. You have to find a good match for yourself to build a long, sustainable relationship.
Yeah. No, it's true.
Yeah.
There's an artist I'm very fond of who we represented for 15 years. I met him at the fair
Yeah.
recently and I said, "When was the last time I met you?" And he said, "10 years ago." So
Wow.
there are all kinds. And then there are artists who are on the message all the time, sending you messages by the minute. So I think
And
access
what
is
about art collectors?
okay. So I think the collectors that we
Art
work with
collecting
largely,
over the years.
yeah, I think the collectors we work with largely are old school again, my vintage. And, they bought, and it's interesting to see that now their kids are buying. And it's a small community, all of us are selling to the same people. And I think
Yeah,
art collectors buy when they know that you have integrity and that you
right.
make sure that your artists are going somewhere. And we
Yeah,
don't want to be in the business of selling off just anything, right?
yeah,
So I think collectors also buy on trust mainly, and they buy from key galleries. It's not like they're going to buy from just anybody. So it's about nurturing
yeah.
relationships, building trust, which I would say is an important thing.
What do
Or
you think has differed for young collectors versus, experienced collectors? What is the difference between them? And how, I also want to ask as a gallerist for you, to you, how are young collectors shaping the world of collecting today? What are they interested more in? Where the audience that you are serving, how is it different for them than the previous generation, let's say?
I think exposure is the key difference. The younger people have studied overseas, traveled, seen more museums, have read more, are more aware of practices, more willing to experiment, with ephemeral work, etc. Willing to take a chance on young artists and paying attention to what the trends are. So I think that's the difference. Older collectors, some of them will go on the basis of what they like or who they believe will intuitively become, uh, you know,
What more?
that apart, an artist can look at, like, say, for instance, Aisha bought a lot of work by Jitish Kalat, and not from me, but from Jitish Kalat
Yeah,
and Atul Dodia. And now you know where the
yeah,
artists are, right? Now, at that
yeah,
time, both
right.
of them were young, they were just out of college. And
Okay,
this Zai was young as well, and this was an instinct, right?
right.
So it's also about who acquires the work for artists, which is important. Like if your gallery is able to sell to a museum, then that's half the battle, right?
Right. No, that's true. Tell me something. There are a lot of people who listen to the podcast who are not only artists, but of course are entrepreneurs. Somebody is an agent today. And I think what's become interesting in the art world today is that you're no longer playing one role, which is very interesting, specifically as artists. Because I think, like we spoke about, when you're no longer just one identity and ship shaped into multiple, there's a lot of perspectives that you're gaining, and then you have a more rounded experience, let's say. um, if anyone who's, let's say, a young gallerist who's started their path, what is your advice for them? What do you think from your own experience is your biggest learning if they're stepping into the world of art on this side?
So I'd say one thing is to put your ego aside. I think you have to be able to be humble and you have to be able to do everything that lands on your table, which could be dealing with the
Yeah,
painter, the carpenter, and the whatever. Okay, you need to know all of
yeah,
this stuff, right? You can't run a business otherwise.
yeah,
Of course, you can hire people who know it. The other thing I would say
yeah,
is, as you said, that's a lovely word, be a shapeshifter, to adapt to things,
yeah.
take on different roles, morph into things. And the third thing I would say really is that somebody once told me that, even a charity has to be run like a business. So you have
Yeah,
to have
true.
numbers right, okay? If you're not going to be able to
Yeah,
sell for your artists, then the gallery business is the wrong place to be in,
yeah.
you know.
And what are your advices for someone? Let's say this is not only specific to galleries or artists, but I think building a base of art collectors is something that we all have to do. Even if
Sure.
you're an artist, self representing, working on your own, working from your studio, or you're an agent, or you're, let's say, a gallerist, what are your tips for someone who's in the early years of their career to, to build a sustainable relationship, to figure out who their collectors are, what kind or how do they reach out, things like that.
Yeah, so, in Charuka, I would say that for an artist, it's different from a gallery, right? With a gallery, it's also more
Let's hear
transactional,
it.
more to do with investments, more to do with appreciation. But with an artist, it's about
Yeah.
patronage, knowing that you
Yeah.
have five collectors who are going to
Okay.
be your patrons, and they're interested in your
Hmm.
work, they're interested in you as a person, they're interested in seeing you grow. And again, I think it's like a give and take. If you don't build that give and take relationship,
Right.
it's not going to happen. It can't just be take, 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 take. There has to be a
Yeah.
balance. That's my understanding. But I'm a little disappointed with younger people today in some ways, because I
Okay.
think it's the
Hmm.
absence of patience which is making them feel anxious and need to do anything possible to clamber up to the top. And that's in the long run
Yeah.
detrimental, because people can sense when you're desperate. People
Right.
can sense that,
Yeah.
right? So I would say
Yeah.
take it easy, think about what you really want to do and
The
how
kind
you
of
want
relationships you want to build, the kind
exactly.
of people you want to be associated with.
Exactly.
Okay, wonderful. Any last piece of advice or an experience you want to share with us?
I think have fun. It doesn't all have to be
Okay.
so serious and highbrow, it can also just flow,
How
right?
do you make sure that you're having fun while having business? I also want to know that because it's not easy. It's definitely not easy.
I think I've learned to step back now, I mean, you can't do
Okay.
anything in a market that's still fairly raw, in the sense that collectors
Yeah.
think nothing of, bargaining and driving you into the ground. And I wouldn't call them collectors, because a collector wouldn't do that. These are buyers,
Yeah.
it's a trend to have art on your
Yeah.
wall, and your architect said get a piece of
Yeah.
art, so you decided to do that. But I think it's important, and the onus is on the buyer as well, to educate themselves, to be aware of how relationships are. I think we respect our buyers. It's important buyers respect galleries and artists, and the role that galleries play.
No, that's true.
But
One
this is
last question, I promise.
Yeah, but this has
Oh,
been
sorry,
fun.
you have something to say. Go ahead.
I was saying this has been fun, while we were talking about fairly serious
Same.
things, so yeah.
One last question I really want to ask. And I ask this from a place of really looking up because I feel as a woman in business myself, in the business of art, I just feel like there's so many roles that we're constantly playing as a woman,
Yeah.
and it's never easy. And like we said, like it's like shape shifting. Um, in your own experience working, I think the times have really changed as for us as women entrepreneurs, creatives, artists, whatever we want to call it. Um, what has been your biggest I would say experience strength to over the years where it was not as let's say common spoken about or let's say empowering as it has become a mainstream notion today. How has your experience been as a women entrepreneur, creative, someone in the art world over the years?
Well, mixed, I'd say. I remember I was fundraising for
Okay.
an institution in Mumbai, and I raised a lot of money for them.
Okay.
I was young, and
Okay.
one of the chairpersons said, and Anupa, with her charm, managed to raise 75 lakh rupees, and that was 20 years ago. And then once I said, it
God.
wasn't my charm that did it. It was appalling to
Oh my
be
God.
dissed by a man in the
I can
business.
agree.
And I
You'd never
think,
describe a man like that, for sure.
yeah, of course you wouldn't, right? Because you were
Mm.
underestimating the fact that I have, a diploma in arts management, and that I'm a fundraiser and I've raised this money for your institution, blah blah blah. Anyway, the long and short of it here is that we live in a patriarchal society, and
Yeah.
whether we like it or not, role play is still a part of our system. And
Yeah.
if we worked in a collaborative space, we might achieve much more. And as a woman today,
That's true.
I've stopped looking at gender. I think if you look at things in
Yeah.
an ungendered way and really in an inclusive way, we might be able to achieve much more.
Yeah.
That's my thought. I mean, I never see myself
Mm.
as a woman
No.
entrepreneur. I just see myself as, somebody who's in the business.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's. I think we. I think, in my opinion. I agree to this, but here's how I shape it. I think when we're doing the act, let's say when we're working, like anybody, you'd never see, oh, I'm a woman and I'm doing this. I think with that thought, you can never even take an action.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the reaction that reminds you, oh, y- you are a woman, like you said. While you were doing something, you were just fundraising, doing the work that you needed to do, doing your business. But it's the world that again puts you in a box and reminds you, and I would say not in a positive way sometimes. Oh, that you are a woman, and that is, I feel like. That is something that needs to change over the time, where you said, I think most women would work from a place of neutrality, but the world also needs to look from a place of neutrality and not see our gender as something to offer.
Sure, but you know what? It plays out either ways, right? A lot of women play their gender. They use that as a
Oh yeah,
card.
yeah, that
So,
is a completely different case for sure.
so there's that, and there's the
Yeah,
fact, as strong women, we always have the room and the ability to push back, right? You have the
yeah,
room to push back. You don't have to take
right,
the stuff that's doled out, just because you're a woman.
yeah,
So I think it's a
absolutely, for sure.
complicated conversation. It's a whole new conversation. It's about one's
Yeah,
position as a
yeah,
woman and within the
yeah,
world. If I come from a place of feeling offended or feeling persecuted, it becomes very hard. But if I come from the
yeah,
place of it being a level playing field and everybody is
yeah,
doing the best and it's on merit, then we are in a better place, I think. I
right,
mean, easier said than
yeah,
done. And today I can push
yeah,
around.
absolutely. I'm sure it's also a lot of experience that comes through. I think when I look back at my own self, let's say 10 years younger, of course, my mindset was really different. You're 50, you're already in the business for so long, you've had so much experience, and that really does,
Yeah.
it really changes you. And it truly, I'm sure we all have a long way. I have a long way to go there, and I'm sure I'll have more experience and wisdom by then.
So, I just want to share this interesting thing that happened the other day. So, I have this carpenter, and
Sure.
he's very bright, as all our carpenters been trained over the years. And, he's
Okay.
always called me madam. And then suddenly on the telephone yesterday, he
Okay.
said, Boliye behen. So, the relationship
Okay.
changed, the equation changed. And I wanted to say, do I want this equation to change?
Yeah.
Because patriarchy, a sister means somebody who looks up to a brother. For me, it's a level playing field. You
Yeah.
do your work, I'm paying you, and that's the end of the day.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it is complicated because India as a country has a lot of cultural norms that we have to straddle,
Yes.
women. It's not
Right.
just patriarchy which impacts.
It's very deeply ingrained. I'll tell you, I bought my car and I remember signing my papers and going through things. And I had my first call, and the agent called me from the dealership, and he told me, whatever, whatever. Can I speak to sir so that I can close the deal? And I said, what, sir? He wanted to speak about payment, and I
Right.
said, there's no sir. It's
Yeah.
me. I'm buying. I'm paying. And
Yeah.
he was a little taken aback. And there are a lot of people involved in the process, because there was a delivery team, there was a negotiation team, there was the sales team, and they formed a group with me while they were delivering and processing. And then somebody was filling my form, and when they were filling, they messaged me, ma'am, Mrs. Charuka Arora, where do I something. And
Yeah.
then I replied, and I rewrote, and I cut the misses, and I boldly wrote MIS, and I said Charuka. Then again I had to tell. I said, I am buying, I am paying, I don't have a father or a husband. Please do not do this ever again. And
Yeah.
it felt so humiliating, not as a person myself, but just
Yeah.
looking at the world at sometimes, that how they self assume
Yeah.
that a place of a woman, like there has to be someone paying for this, there is someone, or like it just doesn't feel enough for them
Yeah. It
you
was the
know
same. It was the same 30 years ago. It's the same today.
yeah, but I think we're
Yeah.
all changing slowly and steadily. I
We
think
are.
the
Yeah.
world is changing, but it's still a little, we still have a long way to go. But, you've led that path. I'm joining you in this. I'm sure so many more people are, young women are doing that. So thank you for the work you've done. And I
Thank you so
only
much,
hope that
Charuka.
you do much more amazing.
Thank you so much
Okay,
for your
one last
acknowledgement.
thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I just want to say, I want to give you the stage as well and share if anything upcoming that you're working on, the new shows that's happening at Anupama, anything that you want to share with us with the projects and about the gallery, for people to follow you, where they can find you, the shows,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah, where our Instagram link is Anupa Mehta Contemporary Art. We have an exciting show coming up in March by Sarika Bajaj, a Bombay based artist who works with bird feathers. And her work is really a commentary on climate change, loss of avian life, and looking at the sort of cultural, spiritual significance of a material like bird feathers. So it's an interesting exhibition. I hope people will come and visit us in Kolaba, in Mumbai, from March 14th onwards.
Perfect. So I'll
Thank
make
you.
sure that once we publish this episode, and if you're listening to this, you'll find the details in the show notes of this episode. I will link Anupa's gallery page, more details, and we'll take some snippets from Anupa from the gallery itself. And make sure you do visit the article and the show notes page to learn more and look at the artist and the work the gallery is doing itself. Now,
Thank you.
thank you
Thank you
so
so much,
much.
Sarita. Lovely to chat with you.
Absolutely.
Have a great
Same
day.
here. I only wish you the best. Same to
Me too.
you.
Take care. Bye. See you.
One sec. One sec.